Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Salam.
How are you doing? So, yeah, welcome to the people already in the chat, the early birds. There aren't always that many, but they sort of join in later on.
So I haven't got the chat up, actually. I might do that now.
Yeah, just on the right.
I don't want to look at it too much, though, because I can get distracted.
So, yeah, Assalamu alaikum. And so, Halal and Tayyib. I think, Abbas, the first time I heard of this was when you spoke about it in the past. It's not something I've heard talked about a lot, but it's in the Quran. Ben, you're going to start giving us a definition. You're going to start on the
Jordan, have you got your mic facing you?
Yeah, is it not very good?
It's a little bit echoey, but it might be my side.
How is it, Ben? This is my...
Yeah,
I can hear better. Yeah, bring it closer.
Right.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's better.
Is my mic all right? I didn't.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's
all
fine.
good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All this high-tech equipment, eh? We've got to, get it spot on. It's quality of our live streams now. So, yeah, Ben, I guess Halal and Tayyib, but definitions, just so we can start off on.
Well, actually, ask Abbas, because he said it's got a definition. My Arabic's not as good, maybe. I looked mine up with an Arabic dictionary, and I can explain to what I know. So Abbas, I'll ask you first.
Well, looking into it, the best explanation I think I found, halal, I think we all know what halal is. Halal is something that's permissible, something that is allowed. And obviously the opposite of that being haram, which is forbidden and disallowed. The interesting thing, of course, is that Allah always uses the word halal and tayyab. Actually, tayyab is always linked to halal. Just signifying how important actually tayyib is. But so the most, let's say, the most far-reaching and detailed explanation I found was there are explanations like pure, but wholesome. I thought was a very good one, and because wholesome has this very holistic expression and meaning, where it's not just one component. So what is halal doesn't necessarily mean that it will also be tayyib, but everything that is tayyib will actually be halal, if that makes sense. And so wholesome, is perhaps the best explanation because it's very holistic. It covers many facets of whatever the halal thing that you're looking at, whether it's your clothes or whether it's your food or whether it's even water. And it's the holistic approach. So all the different components leading up to that halal item reaching you, you'd have to be considerate of all of that. Is that pretty much what you found, Ben, or is it something?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, so I've got it's good, clean, wholesome, and then there's also extra meanings to it, like excellent, gentle, fair, lawful. Gentle's a good one.
Yes.
But yeah, that's what I always known Tayyib meaning. So
Yeah. My research is my mic all right now?
It is.
Okay, that's on the internal one now. So yeah, it's kind of ethical, wholesome. These are the kind of things. And I remember you talking about it, Abbas, in reference to food, obviously in terms of the treatment of the animal. Is that the only sort of place we would use the term tayyib?
Well, the interesting thing actually is that the original, let's say the traditional translation or meaning of the word tayyib was actually very much linked to the earnings that a person has, an income. Is your income tayyib? Is it wholesome? Is it from the correct sources? And that was the primary way of looking at this word tayyib in the Quran, more to do with the income or the earnings of an individual. Now, the beauty about Islam, of course, is that Allah has, within the Quran and within the Hadith, there is the scope of meaning that can be extrapolated and can have many, far-reaching meanings that can apply differently at different times. And what I mean by that is that the reason perhaps why the tafsir or the, you know, the understanding of this word tayyib was limited primarily sort of to earnings, because everything else was actually tayyib. So, you know, animals were reared. Often people loved it. They loved their animals. They spent a lot of time with their animals. They were very connected to nature. They were very connected to what they fed their animals. They would walk for many miles just so they could get good grazing. So the animals would be fed well. You know, they would have water, and they would try to give them pure as clean water. So there was a great, so a lot of that holistic approach to rearing of animals, or where you got your clothes from, you know, they were often made on a hand loom or by hand, knitted by hand. And you would know who the fabric supplier was. You would know what herd probably this wool came from, or what plants, you know, were grown to create certain fabrics or what have you. And so that holistic approach actually was already there. You know, this industrialized form of meat consumption, fish production, fish consumption, you know, chicken rearing and fabrics and clothes, and these things were not industrialized. They weren't mass produced. You didn't have sweatshops, you know, thousands of years ago, where some poor guy got paid a pittance, you know, and couldn't survive, and was clearly, you know, being sort of mistreated. I'm not saying there wasn't hardship and there wasn't mistreatment and there wasn't poverty and there weren't people who were clearly doing things that were untoward in order to get more of a gain. But what I'm trying to say to you is that generally, especially when it came to food, you would know who the farmers were, who the growers were. It would be local produce. It would be organic. You know, everything would be organic. Obviously, since the industrialized production of clothing, of food, this word tayyib actually, because it has far-reaching meanings of being wholesome, being pure, as Ben has alluded to. It has a greater scope of meaning. And this is the beauty about Islam, that what was understood to mean something at a specific time, because the circumstances surrounding those times were very different, the meaning, the scope of that meaning can be more enhanced in future generations as it is now. So yes, it's not just in terms of the consumption of meats and chicken or fish or whatever, but it has and the environmental issues to raise that produce, but also you know, your clothes and you know, items that you might buy, you know, whether it's a decorative item or a, you know, your food mixer or whatever it might be. There are always implications of this word, actually, of tayyib. We seem to have lost Jordan.
Yeah, I don't know if he's purposely done that. He might put himself in the back. I don't know.
He's actually saying, let's see. Okay, he's frozen.
Okay.
So what settings are on? Supposed to
Sorry about this, guys.
Turn up a little. Okay. I don't know whether we're still live or not, but let's have a look.
I think we're still live. Let's have a look. I'll go on to the website. Actual.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
So
yeah,
I'll continue
while
you're checking that. Then
we are still live.
While you're checking that, yeah. So I'll sort of continue while we're sort of plodding along, and then if Jordan wants us to log off and log back on again, we can do that. But you know, there's the old English saying, you know, where, you know, you are what you eat, you know, and you know, I think Sheikh Hamza Yusuf saying a few years back about you know, how can it be that if you know something has been kept in a cruel manner and then slaughtered in a cruel manner, and that suffering that was caused to that animal, whether it doesn't matter what it is, actually, because we have this, you know, we have this very strong teaching in Islam about animal rights, for example, and it's not something that Muslims are just talking about now because it's become a fad and it's become fashionable in certain circles to be talking about. But in fact, we have many hadith which date back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, referring to these things in much clarity and with much force. And so the issue is, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was saying, how can it be that you rear an animal inhumanely, and you slaughter it inhumanely, and that you consume it, and that there will be no effect on you as a human being? And I think the saying where it says, you are what you eat, to some extent one can appreciate and understand that. In fact, even from an Islamic point of view, one has to be conscious of not just what leaves the mouth, but also what enters the mouth. They're important, you see.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of hadith about the Prophet peace upon him talking about how to treat animals and the people who are shepherds and so on. I mean, one hadith I come across says, and it's a paraphrasing it because I can't remember it off by heart, is that the worst of the shepherds is the ungentle one who causes them to crush and bruise one another. Look at how how our meat is farmed now. I mean, alhamdulillah,
yes.
Like most of the lamb and the mutton we have, it's hard to mass produce that in a way like chicken and other meats. So that's good. At least when we get some lamb, we know they've been grazing in fields. But chickens, I mean, I don't want to show any of the pictures, but it is just thousands of them in a shed. They can't move. It's crazy. It's disgusting. And when we buy our halal chicken from the shop, it's cheap. It's definitely come from there. And Allah says that you'll be judged on every atom's worth of good and atom's worth of bad that you've done. If you know you're buying from there, well, you know what I mean. You can put it in the back of your head, but it's the atom's worth of bad there, I think. And if you look at what the Prophet peace upon him said about how to treat animals and what the Quran says about what food is lawful to us. The only standard in modern days now is in the UK, because I don't know about the laws abroad, is that the animals are raised organically, because the standards of organic food in this country raise the standards of also the welfare of the animal. So behind me here is the first halal farm in the UK. It's called Willowbrook Farm. It's in Oxfordshire, and this is the minimum of organic. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. They're out in the open. They're grazing. They're going for worms in the ground. It's that's Tayyib, in my opinion. We got Abbas is gone as well. SubhanAllah. It's just me. I'm just going to connect my my cable here. We're having a few technical issues. Sorry today.
So I mean, Ben, what I was going to say to you actually before I sort of connect the cable is that. Before you became Muslim, that was about what, a few years back, right now?
2011, I think it was.
2011. Your concept of this Tayyib thing within a non-Islamic perception, I don't want to just ask you whether you were already very conscious of this fact, or was it actually learning more about Islam that actually brought you into sort of perhaps be more appreciative of this?
100%. It was about. It was when I became Muslim. I was aware of welfare of animals. I didn't really care too much, to be honest. Most people don't. They just want their food. But I am a massive foodie. I love good cuts of meat, really good quality food, and I love cooking it and so on. So when I became Muslim, I had to go to the halal shops now. And unfortunately, it felt like a warehouse of meat instead of a butcher's. And in traditional English butchers, they've got beautifully arranged. You know where the foods come from, who's cut it, what cuts of meat. But in the halal shops, it was literally buckets of chicken breast. Ask the guy where it comes from. Don't know. And that made me feel So I actually bought some chickens for the gardens for eggs first, and then it grew and grew. And eventually, I had my own little farm in my garden. So I had ducks, chickens, quails, and rabbits, all for meat and eggs, because I wanted to eat the food. I knew it was good, and it wasn't because of the welfare of the animal. It was actually because I knew I know where it come from and so on. It was actually when I had to learn how to slaughter an animal halal way. That's when it opened up, where I really looked into the raising animal the halal way and slaughtering it the halal way. So that's when it opens up, and that's where my perspectives changed quite a lot, and that's how I found out about what there is available in the UK for people who are Muslim and want to choose organic.
And I think often what happens is sometimes people are worried because obviously, you know, organic isn't cheap. You know, when you buy organic, it's usually at least 50%, sometimes almost double the price of normal meat. But I think what people need to realize actually is that the more of us that actually perhaps try to buy organic, hopefully the cheaper it will become, because, you know, it will never be the same price or as cheap as mass-produced industrialized meat. Obviously not. But, you know, we waste a lot of money, and especially if we, you know, we're not hard up and when we have the money. It makes sense that, you know, if you switch to a better meat, a more Tayyab meat, and it costs you, I don't know, a couple of £100 a year more to do so because of the extra cost. I think it's a small sacrifice actually to make, knowing that the welfare of the animal is kept, and also that inshallah it's part of your deen and part of pleasing Allah to try to cause as little harm to animals and as little harm to the environment. You know, tread softly. A lot of scholars have said, you know, that a Muslim is somebody who treads softly, and treading softly is somebody who doesn't leave, you know, a huge footprint, let's say, and in modern terms, one could say a carbon footprint. You know, doesn't leave a huge sort of footprint and disruption for others to have to clear up, and damages the earth, the environment, and obviously and animals in the consequence. You know.
Yeah, really well put. Really well put. I mean, one thing to think as well, it's not just about the welfare of animals. Sorry, it is about the welfare of animals, but other things as well. If you buy organic generally, it's just going to be better for you, and it's better for the environment as well. In the UK, there are a lot of laws to preserve the environment when you choose organic. Organic flour, organic milk and cheese is a big thing as well, because organic milk, if you go to Tesco's and you get a pint of normal milk, pint of organic, it's literally like 20-30p more. I mean, come on. And that means they're not injected with all these drugs and stuff like this. It's so much better. Animals treated better. SubhanAllah, it's you know what I mean?
I've heard some people say that I've tried the organic chicken or lamb and it's tougher, it's harder, and there is something to say about that, because you know, it's not going to always be perhaps what you're used to, and the reason for that is that when a chicken, especially a chicken or even a lamb, you know, when it's been allowed to run around a lot, the muscles become firmer. So it will become a slightly tougher meat, and it may take a bit of time to perhaps get used to, and it may be slightly different the way that you might cook it, for example.
That's the thing. We used to cook in soft meats, the animals that haven't developed their muscles, so we cook it in that way. But if you cook the meat differently, so it matters what you make, but if you cook the meat differently, I promise you it'll be superb. It'll be so much better than your normal meat. I mean, I'm not perfect. I don't always buy organic meat. It's not always accessible. You know, but
you do your best.
Do your best, inshallah. You do your best. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the chicken in this country, oh God, I haven't got the, literally a chicken in this country is born from slaughter within 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. With or less, I think. I think 6 weeks.
Well, I was watching a program, really interesting. Assalamu alaikum, Jordan. Long time no see.
All my new gear and internet. I've gone back to old, and now we're back.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, it'd probably take a day or so just to get used to it. No, we were just discussing basically how, you know, eating organic can be more expensive, and it can taste slightly different, and the way you cook it might be different. But really, I think it's because we've got used to eating that very sort of very tender, soft, watery, spongy type chicken. Our palates have somehow become used to that type of food. And the thing is, I was watching a program. I was just saying to Ben that I was watching a program about American farms and how they produce their poultry there. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm sure I would hope that we don't allow those practices here, but it was literally like you would produce some sort of batteries or something in a factory. It was just the way that it was done, and that these chickens, like you were saying, Ben, within 6 weeks, these chickens become like monsters. I mean, literally. In fact, so heavy that a lot of them were dying. A lot of them were dying with heart failure before getting to 6 weeks, before they could get slaughtered, because they were so big the heart could not cope with pumping enough blood through the body. And the other thing was that they were so big they could not support themselves on their legs. They'd have to constantly just be sitting down.
They don't even clear up the muck as well. It's literally the chicks are put in. They're fed and raised steroid food for 6 weeks. They're bred in a certain way where they quick, and then after that 6 weeks, straight to the slaughterhouse and then clear up. The big a little tip for everyone: when you go buy your chicken, if you're buying it whole, look at the legs where the knees on the feet would be. Okay, if there's like a little kind of burn mark on there, that's where the acid of the chicken poo has burnt away on the skin. If you see that, it's not Tayyib, you know what I mean? So then and I remember when I moved to the house I'm in now, so it's different shops and everywhere, and we were shopping, and I completely forgot about this, and I went to buy normal halal chicken from Tesco. I picked it up and I looked at it, and in the packets where it's all skinned and cut, alhamdulillah. And then I looked at the chicken and I just saw those bits, and I remembered straight from there. And I was like, I even worked in a chicken factory where they call it chicken factory, not a slaughterhouse, and where they slaughter the chickens. This is non-halal slaughter, but in Europe, a lot of the halal slaughter is the same method, but they have a speaker in the background just saying Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. And I think they literally hook them up. And they go down. It's just a machine. It's not. There's no compassion there. It's not Islam. It's not Islam, in my opinion.
I think the other thing that we need to perhaps rethink, and one of the things that studying a very small amount, I would say, to prepare for this little stream, is that I actually learned how much of it I wasn't doing, and it actually made me feel guilty, because I thought, hold on a second, you're going to be talking about what it is to be a good Muslim and how to do these things, and it probably, I hope, inshallah, it's inspired me as well.
Inshallah, it's definitely
not just to be talking. I have, up to this lockdown, we were only buying organic chicken, and lamb in this country, I think, still predominantly is a lot more, let's say, Tayyab than your chickens are, because they are still allowed. I mean, the transportation side of things might be troublesome before they get to the slaughterhouse, and perhaps the slaughtering process itself might be sometimes questionable the way how the animals are handled. But generally, it's not like your chicken where it has still roamed, it has still been fed on some grass, and it has been allowed out. They're not just kept in tight pens like chickens are kept. Do you see what I mean? So I'd say lamb, we perhaps occasionally, we ate very little lamb, though, to be fair. Mainly we ate chicken. And
it's fish, that's the favourite meat. It's the cheap and easy meat. I mean, it goes with everything. Available and it's a nice versatile meat. But I think the thing here is that what I realise actually is that we need to have a different relationship with our food, where it's not just a physical relationship, i.e., I eat this, I get nutrients, and it helps me to build muscle, and it helps my brain to function, and it helps me to live. But that beyond that, there is a metaphysical relationship with our meat, with our food, with our consumption of anything, clothes, whatever it might be, which is that, if we do these things for the pleasure of Allah, to have tayyib, to have things that are wholesome, hopefully that have been reared responsibly, that have been provided for us responsibly, slaughtered or prepared responsibly, that actually it might have
it may have a much better effect on our well-being, our psychological well-being, our physical well-being, but also our spiritual well-being. Because, I think if we are completely closed to and show a lack of care of how we consume things, then we've got to realize that this is not a Muslim who's striving to do his best or her best. This is just us being lazy and possibly causing harm and being part of that cycle of harm. And for our spiritual health, I think it's very, very important for us to be eating. And one of the very beautiful hadith I just encountered today was that, a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sa'd radiyallahu anhu, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says to him, can you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept Sa'd's supplications, to accept my dua, to accept, me praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said, Ya Sa'd, eat from that which is Tayyab, for your supplications to be accepted.
SubhanAllah.
That's very profound, right? Now,
Wow,
I never
yeah.
thought of the fact that, we ask for dua, we supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we pray to Allah for help, for aid, for removal of hardships, of problems, and surely we want to give ourselves the best possible chance in order for Allah to actually accept our supplications. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have said many things to Sa'd. He could have said to him, pray more devoutly. He could have said so many other things. And of course, these things are crucial and they're important, and they're more crucial to read your salah and do these things with khushu. Yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam selected a very profound teaching, which is consume that which is tayyib, for your supplications to be accepted. So I thought that was quite profound, Ben.
Yeah, it's quite scary, mate, to be honest, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really reflects. I mean, if you really look into it and really think about it, to me, it's so obvious. I think it was in a recent live stream. You're talking about the prostitute who fed a dog water.
Yes.
And that got her Jannah. And then the pious person who tortured a cat. I can't remember exactly what that person did, and that granted that person Jahannam, hellfire. Now think about that within society and what every day. So you can't treat an animal badly. You can't torture it for no reason. Is the reason? What if that reason's profit or ease or more food or cheaper food? Is it worth it? I don't know. The more you look into it, the more evidence. I mean, the Prophet peace be upon him used to even forbid branding of the animal. You know how we brand the cows, just right, number 2 falls. You can't. Yeah. I mean, the hadith that I talked about a minute ago about the shepherd who lets the animals bruise each other and stuff. I mean, this is a guidance that even like modern like free range farms don't practice. But I mean, branding, branding's normal in the farming world. It's at the top level. Islam gives a top level of treatment to the animals.
And I think the thing is that obviously we're not saying that become a militant individual where you just sort of start preaching to everybody about eat this and don't eat that, and you're eating this and that's haram, or this is bad. We're not saying become like this, because a Muslim shouldn't really become like this anyway. I suppose what we're advising brothers and sisters is really an advice to ourselves as well, which is just be a little bit more conscious about what you're eating and where it's from, right? We're not saying, look, you've gone out somewhere and you're really hungry and you found, that there's a company, a halal company making, I don't know, beef burgers or something, and you go and have a burger. I don't think we need to necessarily, of course, and it depends upon your taqwa and depends upon your closeness to Allah and how much you can bear and what you can handle, right? Somebody, Joe Blogs like me, you know, subhanAllah, I know that I'm not going to be able to perhaps get to that level. May Allah make it easy for me to perhaps get to that level. But, you know, I might have the occasional, I might go out and have the occasional burger or something, you know. Preferably I'd go for a beef or lamb in this country. Because as I said, I think these animals generally do roam around a little bit more, and they're looked after a lot more than perhaps the chickens. The chickens in particular, and the egg production in particular, I think is quite excessively cruel.
Too
really,
far, too far.
It is really too far, you know. And I understand that different people will draw that line differently. For some people, actually, even the way that we consume lamb and beef in this country is cruel. And I would have to agree that the aspects of that production of beef and lamb are cruel. I'm not going to suggest that then they're not, but do your best, really, you know. Just try.
I think that's what Islam's about, is doing your best and making intention to improve, even if it's like a little bit. What I found is the more you look into this, and the more you adhere to buying organic, the closer you get to the Prophet, peace upon him. This is sunnah. And why I say this is, you might have a budget on your food, and if you go for that organic meat or the organic whatever, that means you're going to have less of that meat. The Prophet, peace upon him, didn't eat meat every day, every meal like we did. No. And that's a good thing to cut down on that. I mean, I did like a couple of months having meat once a week, I think it was, or we bought one bit of meat for the week, and then maybe that made 3 meals for the week. Alhamdulillah, it's good. It forces you to eat better foods as well. And I mean, if you're just used to chips and chicken, like, and then you're not allowed the chicken anymore, what are you going to have with the chips? And then you go, right, what we've got to make, and then it makes you eat more wholesome foods as well. And if you're going that extra, and you want to put goodness into you, and you're buying organic vegetables and stuff as well, like cream of the crop top organic guy, that's even better. And you're getting that nutrients, you're getting that goodness, and you're taking away the bad. Alhamdulillah. A challenge I'll give to everyone is try it for a month. Try it for a month, see what happens.
And I think the other thing is that, firstly, I'd say, yes, try it, do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, Ya Allah, I'm going to try to be as conscious, you know, and connected to the provision that you've supplied, that you've given us, and that I'm going to try, inshallah, to consume as tayyib as possible, inshallah. And so I think there will be great benefit, inshallah, from that. And I think ultimately, I think what we're saying is that, you know, sometimes for some people on certain budgets, you know, it might be very difficult to suddenly turn organic on everything. And to be honest, even the organic industry actually, you know, and the free range industry, when you actually study some of the aspects of what free range actually means, it isn't necessarily what you or I would, you know, view as free range. You know, so for example, somebody said to me, I said, well, what does free range hens, you know, when you buy the eggs from free range hen? And they said, well, they have the ability to leave the, you know, leave their pen or their barn or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily mean just because they've got access to do that they actually will do that. Because a lot of chickens that have been bred now don't like to go out. They don't feel safe to go out. They actually like to stay in the barn, you know. So we've got to realize that, you know, these things can but sorry, I was going to just touch on something you said before you come back in, Ben.
That's all right.
Which was that, you know, you mentioned the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that, you know, he didn't eat meat every day. In fact, what we learn from the Sunnah, and this is the thing, that we all like to quote Sunnah when it suits us. You know, we say, oh, the Prophet ate meat, so it's a Sunnah to eat meat, so I'm going to eat meat as well. But yeah, the Sunnah was not just to eat meat, but the Sunnah was also how much. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not eat meat sometimes for as long as like 2 months, 6 weeks, or whatever. You know, weeks would go by and there would be no meat. So in other words, the Prophet ﷺ actually led a diet that was primarily a vegetarian diet, actually, and a very little meat was consumed. I think they had no beef in Arabia at that time, so it would have been goats, basically. I don't know if they even had chickens actually, but certainly they had goat, and that would be. And we know that the Prophet ﷺ loved his most favorite part of the meat. The lamb was the goat was the shoulder, which is my favorite as well. I think it's a very nice part of the animal, very nice meat, but it was consumed very rarely. It was hardly consumed. It wasn't, we eat sometimes meat 2 or 3 times a day, subhanallah, and that was not the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, what I was going to say is just going back to the free range label in the UK. The lowest requirement is to have I think you've cut off. Is a window that like a little opening of the barn with a small cage that goes outside. So so about 20 of them can go outside at a time when there's about 500 in a barn, and that's the minimum requirements for free range. And it's mostly for the egg production for that. But when you buy organic, you're securing that animal that top end welfare of the animal. So that's why I like in the UK I'm talking about, guys. There's a lot of people from all around the world here, and that's really good. Like security, you can rely on that. You can go, right, this animal's been treated pretty well. It might not be the top best thing, but I can rely on that. But when you get duped by free range hens, is it? Yeah. It's not. That's I think when you think free range, people think of that, and that's not what you get.
And I think so. Really, alhamdulillah, for us, halal is important. Of course, it's important. It's crucially important. But for us, as Muslims, we need to also think about, is this wholesome? Is this tayyib? Is this what Allah would be pleased with me consuming, and consuming it in this way? There's a interesting thing I heard from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf about a particular school, and the sheikh of that school. I don't know if it was one of the imams actually, or whether it was Imam Malik or one of the other imams. I'm not sure, so I don't want to specifically say. But they wouldn't take students on who ate meat, I think, more than once a week or something.
Wow, no way. Because
they said that effectively, that the overconsumption of meat sort of hardens the heart. In other words, there was they saw it as some physiological and emotional, psychological, spiritual state by consuming too much meat. And in fact, we do have hadith of this as well. And we do have the saying of Umar Khattab radiyallahu anhu, when he sees a man going to the market to buy meat, and he says, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to buy meat in the market." And he said, "But didn't you buy meat yesterday? You told me you were buying meat yesterday." And he said, "Did you not hear the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in meat is like an intoxicant? It has an addiction."
Wow.
And in fact, food is very addictive. We know that now. Subhanallah, this was 14 centuries ago. That we're being told that food has an addiction, and meat is addictive. And I think one of the other sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that there is disease in meat. In other words, don't overconsume meat. It hardens the heart. And some scholars have said that this is not just the physical hardening of the muscle, the heart muscle, which actually scientifically now I've heard can happen from eating red meat. The elasticity of the heart is reduced. But in fact, some scholars have said that, it's not just the hardening of the hearts on a physical sense, but on a spiritual sense of hardening the hearts. So the implications actually looking at this subject, I was quite surprised about that. It's very far-reaching, and one of the interesting ayahs in the Quran about halal and tayyib, and you may have read it yourself, is, I'll just read it here. It says that, "O humanity, eat from what is lawful and good. And good in this translation would mean Tayyab, which is wholesome, on the earth, and do not follow Satan's footsteps. Now, it's very interesting that halal and tayyib are mentioned, and then Allah mentions Satan's footsteps straight after, you know. And subhanallah, what's interesting is that not eating halal and tayyib are now being linked to the footsteps of Shaytan. So in other words, not caring about where your food comes from, whether the animal was dealt with cruelty, whether it was unlawful, whether your income from which you managed to buy your foods, your clothes, or whatever was unlawful, would render it not being tayyib, and that is then being linked to the footsteps of Shaitan. So
yeah, I mean, what's the
it's
best?
so important.
The best way for, if I was in his footsteps, is to make the society go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make it a societal norm. It's the best way. Influence, whispers to the people to slowly change the farming practice. You'll make a bit more money. It's not that bad. You know, they're dumb anyway, you know, this sort of thing. And now we live in a society of mass production of everything, and that we're sacrificing the welfare of an animal, the sunnah of the Prophet, peace upon him, and the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran for cheaper meat. Unfortunately, it's hard though, man. When imagine, like, look, when you go to Speaker's Corner and then you go for some food afterwards, we don't go, excuse me, where's this lamb from? You know, you can't always be that vigilant. But you can when you go shopping. You just make it little tiny changes in everything in life. If you start exercising, you'll do one bit and then you build on it. It's the same with Islam. And alhamdulillah, what I find is the more you look into Islam, the more it purifies your life in the dunya as well as in the akhirah. So by eating the food that is tayyib and halal, you'll become more healthy and better. And spiritually better as well. Like, I couldn't believe that. I've never heard that hadith before you mentioned that. That the person asked, "How will I get my du'as accepted?" And it's by eating tayyib food. I remember the hadith of the man in the, you know, the man in the desert, and he's doing du'a and he's really struggling, and the Prophet peace upon him said he expects Allah to answer his du'a when his clothes are haram, his food is haram, and so on like that. There you go. It's the same. It's the same sort of thing.
No, I mean, definitely. No, I agree with you. And I think that I know people often do say, well, you know, Muslims are only talking about this because now it's become fashionable to talk about these things. And I would actually suggest that for some Muslims that might be the case, not necessarily within the sense or the manner in which these accusations are being made, but that because of the social pressures around, that people are recycling more, being more environmentally in tune and in touch, and also with food, meat production and organic and what have you, that has sparked an interest for Muslims, because Muslims sometimes who weren't practicing or didn't know about these things, even I would include myself in this actually, that it does spark an interest that, okay, well, that's all well and good. Society are telling us, and we have a lot of evidence now to support you know, these claims for being healthier and eating more wholesome. What does my religion actually say about these things? Is there anything in my religion actually? And then you actually learn that, subhanallah, there is so much in the religion. And so what it does do, I think, is that though it might spark an interest for some people like myself who weren't and are not very knowledgeable in Islam, that does not mean to say that that's the only reason why we're interested in the subject, or the only reason why we're interpreting those verses to somehow fit to this new way of living or way of thinking. many of these hadith and many of the Quranic ayahs actually are very explicit in terms of the welfare of animals, or the welfare of the environment that we live in. I mean, there's, for example, the hadith which is very explicit about a man doing wudu, and he's doing his ablution and he's wasting a lot of water, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam corrects him by saying, do not waste water. And so when the man says that, I'm doing the wudu, and the Prophet corrects him and says, even during wudu, even if and I don't know if this is a reliable hadith or not, so if I'm corrected on that, people can by all means correct me, but I believe what he was told was that even if you're standing over a river, don't take more than what you need.
Yeah, I've heard this before.
Yeah, so in other words, I mean, the wastefulness and the overconsumption of produce or even water was something that we were explicitly taught about, that we are actually accountable for everything that we consume, that we use, because this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we're grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we're not wasteful, and we do it in accordance to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how Allah has instructed us to do, then inshallah ta'ala Allah will forgive us, and we won't be accountable for those things, But if we abuse those things, and if we do not follow the ideals and the principles of Islam, then it may be that we may be accountable for everything that we've consumed and everything that we've actually wasted and used in that way.
And if you're eating meat 3 times a day for all your life, that is scary, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things I learned was that if we were to just reduce beef consumption by 10%, we would single-handedly sort out climate change and the mess that we're in with CO2 emissions. Because when you look at how much water is needed, for example, to produce 1 kilogram of beef in comparison to 1 kilogram of grain, it's really with the statistic, I don't remember it exactly, but I was really shocked when I wouldn't have ever thought it was the disparity was quite that much, but in fact it is a huge disparity between the two. And the level of protein and nutrients that you can actually get from a kilogram of beef to a kilogram of grain, the percentage that was used in terms of production, you could get an exceptional amount of protein from beans and pulses and what have you. And so, in other words, I'm not saying meat is haram and we shouldn't consume it, or Allah's made it halal. We know it's halal. But for it to truly be tayyib, it needs to be reared properly, slaughtered properly, and we need to consume it properly as well, in the way that the Prophet ﷺ consumed it, for it to truly be beneficial to us and beneficial to the environment as a whole. I think Jordan is still having a problem coming back, isn't he?
Bless him. He said on the chat that he's still here. He's just having a problem with it, but
okay,
I'm sure it'll be good, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. So, Ben, I mean, I know you've, mashallah, reared chickens and things in the past. Is that something that you still do, or is that something that...
No, it's not. I haven't got the means to do it at the moment, but it's something that I will do again when I do have the means, inshallah.
Yeah,
I enjoy it. It's really good. A nice connection with Allah's creation. It's beautiful. And knowing where your meat comes from, knowing that it's been treated well. It's a rewarding thing to rear something from birth to the table. And I've always had the belief, even before Islam, that if you consume meat, that you should be able to do the whole process. In my opinion, that's just me. Me and Jordan had an argument about it once online, but yeah, if you feel you couldn't slaughter an animal, why are you putting it in your mouth? That's why that is that connection to the food. And it is when you raise an animal properly, there is a difference in the taste and flavor. I mean, I didn't even, what you said at the beginning of this stream about the people that might think, oh, it's a bit tough and it's not as. And I didn't even think of that, man, because I see that the toughness and all that is a good sign, not bad. But just like a kid who only likes to eat chips and mashed potato and chicken nuggets because that's what they're used to. That you know, doesn't mean it's good. It's a thing that you can train yourself to like is that sort of thing. But you can get around it. You can soften chicken meat by marinating it in buttermilk before cooking it, things like that. So there's lots of ways of getting around it. Some
sure.
Some good organic. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, so if somebody wanted to sort of go down the organic route of perhaps rearing themselves, well, if they had a reasonable sized garden, then they could probably do that on using like 1/3 of the back of the garden or something like that. Would that be enough? Or
I mean, so I think it's enough for things like eggs. So what you don't want to do is reject the factory farming and then make a smaller version of that in your garden. That's what you don't want to do. So, for example, when I got into this, I looked on YouTube and looked lots of different ways you can rear animals at home for meat, and some of them were basically miniature factory farming. It was really not nice. For example, I had rabbits for meat as well, and that one of the systems was in a container as small as your wardrobe or even smaller, where you have the mum and the dad on different things and the babies at the bottom, and there's not much room and stuff, and they've eaten the grass in a week. So you got to be careful there. I have to say, I'd say if you wanted to do it on your own, just start with eggs. Get a chicken, or you get 2 chickens, so they're together, and you've got 2 eggs a day. Alhamdulillah, for breakfast, and then go from there if you want to. I mean, so when factory chickens take, like I said, about 6 weeks from hatching to slaughter. For actual meat, it takes 3 months. It takes 3 months because the farmers in those sort of farms use a certain breed of chicken that you can't get normally because it's only in the industrial the trade. So the chickens that you'll get will be the chickens they had 100 years ago. Ben,
are there any questions on the? You're looking at the questions as well. So just have a look, see if there's any questions that we can perhaps. If not, we can address. At least we can perhaps ask somebody maybe. So one of the streams that I'm thinking, inshallah, of speaking to Jordan about is, environmental issues of, is Islam green, and what are the teachings within Islam to make us perhaps, a much more sensitive being, and consuming things in a manner which, again, is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by, eating sensibly, but also looking after the environment, because ultimately our grandkids, our children, our grandchildren, hopefully our great-grandchildren, they're going to inherit what we leave behind. And wouldn't it be nice to leave behind something better than what you received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Wouldn't that be part of gratitude to Allah, that you don't spoil the very land, the very resources, the very environment that Allah provided you with?
Allah says that we're custodians of the earth, so we need to look after it. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
So that would be, I think, a good stream, inshallah.
Yeah,
definitely. Have you managed to pick out any questions at all?
No, so I was going to say this is the perfect time to ask any questions that you've got. There's lots of discussion on the chat, not many questions at all.
Sure.
So yeah, there's lots of comments and there's lots of chat that's not on the subject. But alhamdulillah, this is your chance. And remember, Abbas, it'll take about half a minute or so for them to hear what we just said.
To come through, inshallah.
It'll be a bit longer. But yeah, I mean, when you said about the environment, it reminds me of the Hadith of the Prophet peace upon him, when he said, even if you plant a tree on the Day of Judgment, that would be a good deed for you. That would be considered a good deed. It's encouraging that is a good deed. That will be marked as a tick.
In fact, you're right. In fact, I think it's even if it's imminent. I think it's between the 2 horns being blown or whatever. I think even if it's imminent, and you have a seedling, plant it.
Yes, that's right. It's not on the Day of Judgment.
Subhanallah. So it's even though you know that the end is literally just here, subhanallah, plant the seed, plant the plant, if you can. And so that I think that's a very powerful thing, really, to show us that actually, the environment is extremely important. I think I think one of the things I would also suggest is that if you do embark on this journey, and I think it's easy to become like that, and I mentioned it before as well, you can become quite militant in the way you want to do things.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, you can become quite militant. I was just saying a little cough there. Sorry, Ben.
That's all right. No, I wasn't looking at the screen, so I just...
Oh, right, okay. And it's important not to do that, not to suddenly put pressure on everybody around you to conform to, what you think is the right way to proceed, and actually lead by example and help people. And if people want advice, then give them advice. Don't necessarily just push your advice on everybody. What you do find sometimes is people will go to people's dinners and they'll offend them by asking them 100 questions. Where did this meat come from? And is it HMC? Is it HFA? Is it this? Is it that? And, don't you know, this is not right, and this is not halal, or that's not halal, or this is not correct, And I think it's very, very important not to be like that, and, allow people time.
Yeah. It's about, as long as that intention. And if you make the intention to just make that little improvement, alhamdulillah, may Allah accept it. We've got some questions now, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
So we've got a few. Rabbit does taste like chicken, but that's one of the questions. But yeah, one of them said, Ben, should Muslims who have backyards start growing fruits and vegetables this summer? If you want to, yeah, it's a nice hobby. There's certain things you could do that are really easy, like herbs. You can start with potatoes. You can even if you don't have a garden, you can buy big sacks, fill it with earth, and you can start making your own potatoes. Just make sure that like the soil you get and the like, if you use any feed for the plant, it's organic. Yeah, if you want to do it, it'd be good. It's if you've got the means, go for it. It feels so good. You actually care. Like imagine you've got some beetroots and you're going to make a salad. This event of you actually first cutting that beetroot and going to prepare it makes the food you appreciate it a lot more. And you have a better experience, and you have a lot more gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Last year, Ben, we got an allotment, and we grew our own courgettes and cherry tomatoes and beef tomatoes and some marrow and potatoes, and I can tell you that it was the nicest vegetable that I've ever had in my life. Yeah. The tomatoes were like literally sugar. I mean, they were so sweet.
Yeah, mashallah, that's awesome.
We were very lucky. It wasn't last year. I think it was the year before. When we had that really, really hot summer. Mm-hmm. That was not last year. The year before that summer, 2 years ago. And the tomatoes were just unbelievable. The smell of the tomatoes. You put a bowl of tomatoes in your kitchen, and you could actually smell them all in the kitchen. The fragrance of the lovely tomato flavor, and the sauces you made from it, whether it was with your bolognese or whatever, or just in your salads, and it was actually completely different from anything you've ever tried. It was amazing.
Oh, mashallah, that's awesome. One question we got is where to get this meat. And now I can only go from my experience in the UK. There's a handful of farms in the UK that do halal organic meat. You can just Google them. Just Google halal organic halal meat. The one that I mentioned is near Oxford. That's Willowbrook Farm. They all deliver around the UK. Alhamdulillah. What you'll find is that you'll do maybe once a month shop, like a big shop maybe, and some of your main meals will have that meat in it. That's the best way to do it, I'd say. Do one order of this meat, get it, put it in the freezer, and you can continue to buy your other meats and that, but you'll just see the difference, and maybe inshallah you want to just buy that organic meat and eat less meat for the week, and but yeah, alhamdulillah.
I'm lucky. I've got a local shop not too far away.
Really?
It's about 10 minutes away, really.
Oh,
Lucky. And they actually, the lamb isn't organic, but they get these chickens that are organic. They tend to be a different color. They're a bit yellow.
Yeah, corn fed. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and they cost, like I said, they're probably. I mean, these chickens are at like nearly, I think, £6 each, and they're not very big.
Wow, that's good.
They're not very big though, so they're probably I'd say just 1.2 kilos or something like that. 1.3. They're not very big.
Mashallah, that's a really good price.
Yeah, it is a good price. Yeah, and you can get obviously normal chicken. You know, you can get quite a large 2 kilo chicken for like £4.50 or £5 or whatever. So yes, it is more expensive, but I would agree that it's when you make your soups and things from organic chicken and those bones are being boiled, it actually does taste better. I think there's a much nicer flavor.
Yeah, I think so. And every time I stop buying organic or buy less, and then I get the organic, I'm like, oh, what have I been doing? This is amazing. Like the food you could cook's awesome, especially food that emphasizes the flavor of the meat instead of foods that cover the flavor of the meat. Things like curries and stews that cover the flavor of the meat. It doesn't complement it as well. But if you do like a roast chicken or whatever, you really appreciate it then.
Yeah. Are there any other questions, Ben?
Yes, there's one specifically for you. I'm just finding it now because it's the chat's going quick. It says, we'll get there. Sorry, bro. One moment. Yeah, Brother Abbas, can we make a comparison between Tayyib and organic?
Well, I suppose we could do, but it would depend upon the definition of the organic. So, for example, not all organic, not all organic food is going to be Tayyab. But the chances are that if it's Tayyab, it's probably organic. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I think it's a good way of classifying a meat and making sure that it's the welfare of the animal is good and the intake of what the animals, the grain and the grass what they're having is good. So I think it's a good way of judging that.
And also, Ben, and I would also say, Ben, that and it's about not becoming militant. We're not saying become a militant individual. You know, where I mean, I've heard some scholars, for example, say that that they don't even buy clothes now from the factories and places like that because there tends to be a lot of oppressive practices where the workers are in a sweatshop and they're really not paid very much and what have you. And I do accept that those circumstances and those and if you can get to that level, alhamdulillah, mashallah, I'm not criticizing the scholar in the least. I think it's wonderful if you can get to that level. I don't think not everybody can literally buy fabrics from a resource, from a place which is truly Tayyab, and then have it stitched themselves. Again, paying a fair wage to the person doing the stitching. Not everyone, excuse me, is going to be capable of being able to do that. But it's not about being militant. I think it's just doing your best.
Yeah.
Taking steps in the right direction.
A lot of people forget how powerful one small change for the sake of Allah is. Remember that when you take a step towards Allah, He'll take 10 steps towards you. And that's in everything you do. If you give up something for Allah, He'll give you something better. If you give up that some of those things, for something better, then Allah will give you something better, whether it be in this life or the next one, inshallah, both.
Inshallah.
There's a lot of good. That's what I love about Islam is that Islam is all about self improvement and empowering yourself and being conscious of what you're doing to become better, to get in sync with the creation of everything that exists is created to worship Allah, except for the jinn and the mankind. And we've got that privilege of choosing. And the more closer you get, the more closer you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's just small things. It's really good. It's really good. And it's good economically, like dunya wise, it's good economically. It's good in general just to get to get to that standard of the Sunnah and the Quran of Tayyib food. There's a lot of questions coming up now, which coming on the verge of Fatwa. So we're not gonna talk about that because we're not qualified. You can ask your local scholars or go on certain websites that have fatwas on about halal food and fiqh. Because that's a wormhole. So what else have we got?
and obviously because there may be nuances and differences of opinions, and different scholars from different countries, different communities may have a different ruling depending upon the circumstances that they're in. You see, and so it's very difficult to actually ask questions, and certainly fiqhy questions. There really should be for scholars to tackle.
Although inside, I might want to go. Yeah, this is what I follow and what my reading is.
Right.
I'm not someone of authority at all, and I don't think we are either, and both of us aren't. So there's a difference of opinions in a lot of fiqh issues.
Yeah.
Have a look at them. Ask your local scholar. Inshallah. So what have we got? We've got a lot of questions about growing your own stuff. Well, I think that's awesome. Have you said you've grown your own stuff, haven't you? So we got. Sorry, my mouse is a bit rubbish. What do you recommend as a better place to grow something in a bucket, next to your house, outside, or on the roof? Either or's good. It matters what country you're in as well. If you're in a country that's like beating down with heat, you got to make sure what you're growing isn't going to die in that heat. So maybe you might want to put it in the shade. Just look at like the beauty of this generation and this age we're in is any skill can be learned on YouTube.
I totally agree.
I learned how to make sourdough bread this month. So there's all sorts you can learn. So if you really want to do it,
inspiration actually was my wife. I mean, she pushed me towards, because when she was young, they used to grow everything, and she had chickens and they had rabbits, and they used to they were organic, and they were very conscious of these things, mashallah, decades and decades ago. And alhamdulillah, apart from mashallah being a very good cook, she's incredibly good at growing things. So
mashallah, that's awesome.
I really do put it down to her. But I would say, yeah, you're right. Go on YouTube, see whether you're facing the sun, or the the pot that you wish to use is shaded predominantly most of the day, and it will vary upon that. But the easiest things to grow, I would say, are herbs like coriander, mint.
Do them in the window.
Parsley, they're really easy to grow, and the coriander that you grow, you could just crush the seeds and you just bury them like in an inch of compost, and they're very easy to grow, but the other things that are really easy, I think, and if you've got plenty of sunlight where you're growing, is tomatoes. And a reasonable sized pot, you can actually grow really nice tomatoes. And believe you me, if you get a nice variety in your salads, that you'll be blown away, because they just taste so nice. It's amazing,
isn't it? And to get that quality at the supermarket, you have to pay a lot of money. It's like Tesco Finest, £3.50, sugar drops things, and you can get it for hardly anything. Just what I'd recommend if you're going to do it is look. Some things need plant food. Look at that. Try and buy organic plant food, or something that's natural. I mean, when I had chickens, to get a good quality egg, it needs a high protein diet. So you could buy chicken feed with protein added to it, or what I did was I made a mealworm farm, which is basically this mealworms are little tiny, like almost maggots, but they're not. They're more like a caterpillar type thing. And it's so you'd have this box, and you'd have these beetles that would lay the eggs, and there'd be a system where the eggs sifted under, they would hatch there, and you'd have mealworms, and I just chuck them, and it was so prolific that it was easy. So they would get their wheat feed. You can buy organic chicken feed as well, and then you can give them some and they get so excited about that. And the big thing is the happiness of the animal. In Islam, we a lot of things in Islam, we believe a lot of things have a consciousness, and have that connection with that animal is a good thing. And also make sure when you go to slaughter that animal you want to do it in a Tayyib way, you want to do it in the halal way, you want to do it merciful, because you have that connection. And what I found from my experience is that there's not hardly any resistance because of that, because it knows, and it's fitra is connected. So we're the ones that we have to choose to worship to worship Allah. So but from my experience, that's how it is.
And I used to ask, and I asked my wife, I said, well, so when you kept your chickens and you slaughtered them, the traditional way of seeing chickens is they flap about a lot and they're almost struggling and screaming, and God knows, I mean, it looks like quite a horrific thing. And she said, no, because they're used to coming into your arms and you just stroke them, they're already closing their eyes and almost asleep. And when, subhanAllah, you do the zibah, you cut them, they just close their eyes, they just almost go unconscious straight away.
Oh, this is a subject that will come up with people investigating Islam, is halal, the barbaric evil way of slaughtering animals, and this is the reality. By the way, I did a year studying agriculture, and my tutor, who's a non-Muslim, he's got a small holding as well as teaching, and he said the best way to slaughter the animal is to cut its neck, and the biggest reason, and if you think about it scientifically, is because it faints. I fainted. I don't know if anyone here has fainted, and the reason you fainted was the blood pressure in your brain dropped. What do you think is going to happen when a really sharp blade very quickly and all the blood comes out? What's going to happen? You're going to faint. So it's literally seconds of oh, gone, done. And that's merciful. That's merciful. So that's the reality. That's what I've experienced as well.
No, you're quite right. And, I studied a little bit, I'm not a year in agriculture, but certainly when this topic of halal being cruel was constantly being bashed around, and people were being bludgeoned, people of religion, Jews and Muslims were being constantly bludgeoned by these arguments that it's barbaric, it's medieval, and it's cruel. And I read a study actually from the Hanover University, and it's online. You can get hold of the study. It's not a very long study, and what they did actually was they got goats and they implanted probes inside the brain, and then they allowed those goats to heal over a period of a few weeks, months, whatever. And then they did the zibah, the slaughtering, using the shahita and the Muslim method. So the Jewish method is shahita, and obviously for us it's zibah, halal method. And then they also did experiments with giving the animal a shock, which is what they normally do for stunning, and then they slaughtered it according to that method. And it was very interesting because they did like an ECG and EEG monitoring of the brain of the animal to see whether it was feeling pain, anxiety. And what they found is that the shahita method and the halal method, the requirements were very strict in terms of the knife had to be extremely sharp, and that the severing of the animal should be right up to the back of the throat, just before the spinal cord. You don't cut the back of the animal's spinal cord. And within Judaism, if you do it even accidentally, apparently it's not kosher, you can't eat it. And in Islam, apparently what I've learned, and may Allah forgive me if I'm mistaken, but if it's an accident, it's still halal, but you're strongly advised not to cut the animal's spinal cord. And what they actually found was that the stunning of the animal caused it excruciating pain. And though the animal was paralyzed and couldn't move, it was actually still sensing a lot of pain. And then the cutting of the animal and everything else, the whole process lasted in a much longer, pain and suffering to the animal. And what they found was with the shahita method and the halal method, the back of the jugular and the nerves, the pain sensory nerves, actually was severed. And that the animal often, like you just mentioned, almost lost consciousness like immediately. So it was like in a state of, semi-consciousness. And ECG and the EEG monitors, the monitors that were there for sensing pain, they just went flat. The animal wasn't sensing anything anymore. And the question then arose as to why was the animal seen kicking and moving around, because that normally signifies excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And what they found is because the halal method and the shahita method, the Jewish kosher method, made you keep the spinal cord intact, the animal was still registering and monitoring the loss of blood to the brain. And as a consequence, the animal was exercising and pumping that blood to get to the brain. But because obviously the throat was severed, the animal, in fact, was pushing out all of the blood out of its body. So subhanAllah, look how, Allah has given us a method, mashallah, that when you think about it, to the onlooker, the stunning might seem more humane because the animal is not kicking and moving around. But in reality, subhanAllah, what Allah has given us in terms of knowledge of how to make the animal halal, how to do the zibah, how to cut the animal, is incredibly humane, and it's an incredibly good way and a healthy way. I remember one lady saying that she only ate halal meat, and I said, "Are you Muslim?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, why are you eating halal meat?" And she said, "Because my doctor told me to go and eat halal meat because it's less blood."
Wow.
There's less blood in there.
I mean, so from my looking into the idea of stunning and so on like that, I think the biggest problem with Islam and stunning, and when I say stunning, I don't mean a stun gun, I mean the electric stunning method, is that it's not 100% reliable to work each time. So then you'll be putting more harm onto that animal in the long run as a general rule. What you do find, Abbas, is that it matters what animal it is, but mostly, even with the stunning method, the animal will still kick, because all the stunning does is to make it unconscious, make it faint, knock it out. The same method's done by cutting without the stun as well. Now, in this country, bigger percentage of halal certified meat is stunned with electric in that way, and it matters what animal it is in the way it's done. Chickens, for example, are more likely to be stunned in this country. Now, like I said, I'm not here to give fatwa at all, so I'm definitely not qualified. But there's from my research, the majority of the scholarly opinion that stunning an animal for halal slaughter is acceptable, with the intention of easing that suffering. But you've got to remember, Abbas, that what's the slaughter process for these halal factory farms? So they're not actually halal, so it's a mass production of killing that animal. So actually stunning that animal in that circumstance is probably better, because they're literally lined up. There's a lot of things when you kill an animal halal way of the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, things like that the animal shouldn't see another animal. They need to be taken away alone. Separately. Shouldn't see they shouldn't see it. They shouldn't see the knife. Things like that. These aren't. This sort of sunnah is not happening in those halal certified cheap kidney. It is a machine, and maybe a man's doing it by the machine, or there's a machine doing it, and there's a voice recording. I don't think that's the case in the UK anymore, alhamdulillah. No. But it used to be like 10 years ago. I think the main thing again here is we're not saying become all militant on it, but just be conscious of the fact that it is important what comes out of your mouth, what you say is very, very important. But it's also very, very important what you put in your mouth and what you put inside your bodies. And inshallah ta'ala, the more closer you can get to, and there are some wonderful lectures on YouTube about halal and tayyab. And I would urge the brothers and sisters perhaps to refer to the real scholars, because mashallah, they give such a nice in-depth explanation. And inshallah ta'ala, make it perhaps even easier to make the switch, inshallah ta'ala, or at least,
move in the right direction, inshallah ta'ala. Well, I hope this stream has been beneficial, inshallah ta'ala. I think Jordan was struggling today with technology. I think he recently had the internet changed. I think it was this morning. So I think it probably is that. But I don't know if you want to add anything, Ben. Otherwise, we can bid our brothers and sisters, inshallah, a nice day. And
well, I hope this today's giving you some information that you never thought of before, giving you a different look at Islam and the treatment of animals. That's why I came on, and but obviously it's a bigger scope of that. So may Allah reward you for listening. Let us know in the comments if you did make any changes. That'd be awesome, because when this live stream ends, it will become a normal video, and you can comment below. So even if you can say, "Oh Ben, I tried it for a month," that'll make me happy, because a little bit of good is a lot on the Day of Judgment.
Alhamdulillah. Well, and Jazakallah, Ben, for you as well, and Jazakallah to everybody again for tuning in. And remember us in your dua, inshallah, that we can hopefully instill some of these teachings inshallah in our own lives, because I think I definitely don't feel like I do enough. And a lot of the times when I was going through some of the material, I actually felt a bit guilty talking about it today, because I thought, subhanallah, I'm going to do a little talk about it, but I don't think I do all of this myself. In fact, I don't do much of it, so I should really try to inshallah practice what I preach. May Allah forgive me for not doing so.
The big thing you preached was you don't have to be overzealot, and little changes go a long way. So may Allah make it easy for us to do the right thing. I do want to mention something before we log off, though. To everyone that's online, how many people are online? Cool, 90 people. So tomorrow we're doing a stream on tattoos and Islam. It's very controversial, and I'll be on that one. So log in tomorrow, inshallah, where we talk about tattoos and Islam. And
what time is that, Ben?
I don't know actually. I think it's 2 o'clock as well.
Okay.
Let me double check. Sorry about this, guys.
Inshallah.
But yeah, so sorry, one moment.
That's an interesting one, because I've actually heard, mashallah, a lot of people who've converted to Islam that people have often criticized them for having tattoos.
That's the whole point of this.
And it's obviously wrong to do so, because what a person has done before they accept Islam, Allah has already forgiven them for. And they should, and in any case, I think we've already discussed this previously, that we shouldn't judge one another. Even if we see a brother or sister who's Muslim and they've got a tattoo, we shouldn't start judging people and start really criticizing people or talking about people about what they may or may not have done. Sometimes people, even being Muslim, actually become practicing on the deen later in life, and in when they were ignorant about certain things, they might have done certain things, but we shouldn't hold them in contempt and should not hold them in judgment. And if a person's come into the religion, quite frankly, I don't think we should even bring it up and say it to them. I think it's just completely wrong. But I'll let you talk about that, inshallah, tomorrow, because I think you might have some personal experiences there as well, I'm sure.
And I've got a lot of anecdotes as well of other people.
Well, it's funny because actually a lot of people that do come into Islam, actually, funny enough, a lot of them do actually have tattoos. So
in this culture, it's in the non-Muslim English culture. Normal. Most people have them.
Of course it is.
Like making it hard on people to accept Islam. It's silly as that. We'll see. Well, tomorrow, I don't want to ruin anything.
No, it should be an interesting one, inshallah. So with that, we'll say assalamu alaikum to everybody, and please remember us in your dua, and make dua for us that we can, inshallah, embark on journey of improvement as well, that we don't just say things and then not do it ourselves, inshallah. All right then. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu
alaikum, Ben.
I hope Jordan's. It's just me. Jordan, how do you turn this off? I think I'm just gonna leave studio. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.